We have access on a daily basis to senior leaders and to, I guess, influential decision makers who can make changes in the hiring structure and what they're doing.
Over the last couple of years, we've made sure that as a business, our culture and the service that we offer is a representation of what we want to see in society. So we will be talking to these senior leaders about some of the challenges and getting into detail around some of the initiatives that have been successful and worked for them.
What we really would like to do is kind of normalise the conversation and get people comfortable with having conversations around diversity and inclusion.
So today we have an excellent HR and transformation leader who is now a partner at IBM, Stuart Martin. Stuart's worked across both consulting and industry over the last 20 years globally, and anything I say is not going to do his career justice, so I'll leave it to Stuart to introduce himself.
Hi Magnus, now thank you for that short introduction, but also thank you for inviting me along today. So really great to be here. If I were to talk about my career, it could take a long time, but I'll probably speak about it. I always speak about it as if it's a sandwich. So I started out in consulting at about 12, 13 years with Accenture. I then went into a senior corporate HR role with the Coca-Cola company. And then I returned to consulting, so the other end of the sandwich. Always in HR transformation, always to do with people and change. And so that's been my focus over the years. And what I'd say is extremely fortunate for myself. Through all those career choices, I've had the opportunity to live and work in 7 different countries.
Wow.
South Africa is my native country, New Zealand, Asia Pacific, India, Central Europe. And then, of course, because of the nature of the work I do, I engage with senior HR leaders and clients. I often go into their environments and my thoughts today as we talk about some of these topics will be reflective of that. So thanks for having me. Look forward to the discussion.
No, listen, my pleasure. And for those listening, me and Stuart have had some really good conversations over recent weeks about all things DE&I, and there's been a kind of huge focus on inclusivity, which is something I think Stuart's focused on over the years on various transformation projects. So I guess it will be a good way to start the conversation with what I thought was an absolutely fantastic topic that we discussed a couple of weeks ago. And that was around what are the practical steps that organizations need to take to create a truly inclusive workplace?
Oh, no, thanks, Max. It's a topic that's, as you rightly point out, close to my heart. And as I said, because of the type of work I do, I've been very fortunate to go into multiple workplaces in multiple countries. And my thoughts today are going to be reflective of some of those insights. But of course, it's also going to be influenced by the pandemic that we are, thankfully starting to see the tail end of today, even this week. And as we slowly return to the workplace, I think there's some great opportunities on the horizon and some exciting times. Yeah. So to your question, I have some very specific thoughts and ideas I could share with you today, because it is an exciting time. And that I'd say first and foremost to the pandemic, we can leverage and utilize the technology and the opportunity to almost reset ourselves, the way we come to work, the way we think about work, the way we perform work. There's an opportunity to reset. And in my own mind, also rebalance around, our whole concept of work. We've proved to ourselves over an 18-month period that a lot of the work that we used to do in the physical office can now be done virtually, remotely. And so I think there's an opportunity to do a few things. One, let's make sure that the workplace is much more accessible. Many people have valid concerns about returning to the place of work, given the pandemic. There may be vulnerabilities that we are unaware of, but here's an opportunity to reshape, rethink the workplace to allow better access. Really practical example, multiple entry points into the office. The other examples I could think of is, stagger starting times. What do we all have to come in at 9 o'clock and crowd the entrance? So staggered starting times is one I'm particularly keen on, to allow people to come and go as they please. And if we take that just a little bit further, do we all have to come in at the same time and leave roughly the same time? Is there an opportunity now that we've proved that we can work virtually and physically to come in at different times maybe spend a short bit of amount of time in the office for particular purpose, and then head back home, knowing that we can pick up the work on our devices when we get back home. And for me, that's an inclusive process. It allows people who have child commitments, people who have other commitments, to perform the work, come into the office if they need to, but be able to pick up the work when it suits them. So for me, that's an inclusive process. The other one, which I would like to think about as well, I know travel's been restricted. It's quite topical now with all this green red light system today. But there are a number of positives in this as well. Far less business travel, much better and positive impact on the environment. But from an inclusive perspective, it also provides you with the opportunity for those people who are unable to travel. I look at you, you've got 2 young kids, and if you suddenly have to go to, a conference which is good for you, opportunity to network, etc., then you couldn't go in the past because you wouldn't want to, you had some restrictions. You now have the ability to still attend virtually or remotely. And, maybe we mix it up with some attendees and so forth. But the fact that you could still participate in a learning conference or a sales conference or a particular event without having to travel, there are multiple benefits, including on inclusivity, because that includes you. And there are others who have other challenges about being able to travel that frequently or so forth. So I think the world is absolutely has the opportunity to reset and rebalance. The other activity that I think also presents us with a great opportunity here is the technology is there nowadays to really listen and actively engage with people. HR or senior leaders don't really have to create the workplace anymore. We have the opportunity through collaboration tools, through surveys, through listening techniques to actually ask people, how would you like to create, or what would you like to create a very inclusive workplace? And it could be as complex or as simple as we make it, but let's listen. But there's also now an opportunity to do some really simple things. One, the canteens, where you offer food. Some organizations offer food within the canteens. Do they have to, open at 11 and close at 2? Works for the caterers, maybe, but I don't know about you. Many times, I've got to leave this call now and grab the last sandwich before they close up. Can we stretch that window so that you can come into the office later, leave earlier, and still have that sort of opportunity to do that? And then, of course, if we go even more granular, the opportunity to change the menu to be much more inclusive. Not everyone is meat and veg. There is an opportunity to, vegan food, more sustainable food, ways around packaging and so forth to be much more environmentally friendly. The list can be endless. So I think there's an opportunity to listen and take these inputs in, right down to potentially changing the menu, the wrapping, time available. The other two, before I pause, I can see you may want to ask me a question, but that's okay. The other two things I really would just like to pick up on, and again, this is based on, I'm really fortunate to be able to kind of work around the UK quite a bit and go into client environments. It's just the physical space and how that's used. How often have I gone into a head office of an organization, they have the 8th or 10th or 12th floor of a building, great views across the Thames or architecture, but everyone sat and looking at their laptop and their backs to the window. And for me, there are two missed opportunities here. One, better use of natural light, because we know the research is there. Natural light is much more positive, is much more beneficial. And two, the opportunity to perhaps shape the desk and the way the office is set up that allows people to reflect, take the eyes off the screen, take in the natural beauty or just natural light. It has a calming effect. And of course, a much more positive impact on the from an environment perspective as well. And then the second one I'll call out because I think it's important, we often miss, is the use of color. So again, there's a huge amount of research out and available today that shows the use of color can have a very positive impact in a work environment. Blue helps make people feel more calmly. lighter tones such as white enhances, enhances productivity and thought. So I have a meeting in the morning in a white room, you're bound to get higher levels of concentration. If you have to have a collaborative session and work differently, use blue or orange. And there's a huge amount of evidence around saying those are positive benefits. But anyway, I think you had another question for me, but I really sort of can get into this quite a bit.
For sure.
The opportunities around creating an inclusive workplace and therefore an inclusive workforce are huge. And I think this is a unique opportunity as we kind of rebalance and reset.
Yeah, no, for sure. And listen, please don't apologize for talking. There's some great insight there. One of the questions I was actually going to ask was around physical space, so that's fine. You kind of already touched upon that. But just to kind of go back, I guess as an outsider looking in, or for people that are listening, you mentioned obviously the survey piece, and obviously with every kind of change, there's always that collation of data, if you like, to try and understand what that change needs to be. So when you talk about kind of the physical space and making sure that the office is an inclusive space and taking the data, doing the surveys and whatnot, how productive have you found that? Because I feel like, so I guess the question I'm asking, I feel like for you to understand what that needs to look like, I feel like you may have done your own research and gone off your own back to kind of understand what good looks like and how you can kind of increase productivity and make the office more inclusive. But if you were doing a survey, so let's say someone like me who's never researched that ever, how productive would my answers be, and how helpful did you find those surveys? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think there are a few parts, the component parts of the question, but let me try and unpick it, because I think there are a few component parts that I'll try and talk through. So my first comment, and as I vaguely mentioned in my introduction, my area of focus is in the use of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence in the workforce and in the workspace. So my answer will be based quite a bit on that. And so a few thoughts in this to respond to you. Firstly, survey is one of many tools to help get a better sense of how people are feeling and reacting in the workplace. So, there are traditional surveys you can do. Some of them are becoming much more sophisticated. So, for example, you just have to use an emoticon to give a sense of how you're feeling at a particular point in time. There are more formal surveys that help you understand, how you feel in a particular situation. So, for example, I used the example a few minutes ago around, getting people into in an environment where the walls of a particular room are white and there's white lighting, perform a particular task, and then immediately thereafter, as they exit the room, we have some technologies now that allows you to, a bit like at the airport, smiley face, neutral face, or happy face. And the question is, at the end of this meeting, how do you feel? And then choose it there. And if you do that on an ongoing systematic basis and analyze the data, you very quickly get to the evidence that allows you to understand whether the workspace, the color, the natural lighting, the look and the layout and the feel is having an impact. And also, of course, whether that impact is incremental or just marginal. So the data does exist. I've also personally been involved in client engagements and client work where we've changed the physical layout of the office to enhance collaboration, because that's how that does. And so there are two things that usually work quite well. When you put out office space in a circular mode, where people tend to have the opportunity to sit and look at each other in a more relaxed environment, it does enhance collaboration. It does enhance creativity. People are much more relaxed, and they tend to, and the way the space is laid out in a sort of semicircle usually works well. It allows people to participate. The very traditional way is kind of, around the table, and the person in the top of the table usually dominates the discussion. So just those small things do make a substantial difference. As I mentioned, I worked with Coca-Cola. A few years ago, we revamped the office in Hammersmith. We moved it to central London, and the amount of thinking, planning that went into there was substantial. We created quiet spots for people to work, for example.
Mm.
So you come in, touch down, you perform the work. We didn't have power plugs in there because then people would spend the whole day there. So when you're back in that, you had to move out. But we created quiet spots. We created collaboration areas that was set out with specific colors and branding, and so forth. And so the examples are quite endless. But there's a lot of evidence around to track that. And I used color earlier. Natural light has been known. There's long-standing research that shows that if you use natural light, people are relaxed, and people tend to take in the view much better. So there's it doesn't only have to be on surveys. There are some pick it up as well. So I'll finish off with another way of tracking that. And some people find it a bit unnerving. But if, for example, you want to enhance collaboration on a project or a particular topic, and we all get into a room and we may know each other as colleagues but never worked together before, we do the introductions and then we kind of get going. 2 hours later, the actions have been agreed and you move on. What you can do over a period of 24 hours or 3 weeks, you choose a time frame, look at those people who are in that room, how often they collaborate on email, through calls, through WhatsApp, through multiple channels, how more frequently prior to that session they actually collaborate around this particular topic. It allows you then to get a sense of whether that's been a productive session, and the tools and the way that you've done that is inclusive, enhances creativity, and gets you to the outcome that you seek. So you can monitor the platforms that people use to achieve that. So now I'll answer your question, because it was a multi-layered question.
No, yeah, for sure, it definitely does. It was basically just to kind of, for someone like myself who's done absolutely no research, I would probably go to surveys if I wanted to work out how, let's just for example say I had a company, if I wanted to work out how my employees feel and how inclusive they feel that the environment is, my go-to would be surveys. But I was just interested to hear, number one, how productive that is, and number two, some of the other methods which you've touched upon, which is great. So kind of leading on to another topic that we kind of discussed in some detail, and you also mentioned it just now. And again, I think this is a super interesting topic. Whilst we're not going to sit here and talk for 3 hours, we certainly could around some of these topics. But you've mentioned your background in AI, tech, and we kind of came up with a discussion around how do you use emerging tech as an ally for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh yes, I do recall this. I do recall this question. So yeah, absolutely. So my thoughts in the space, and I spend a lot of my day and weeks in working in these sort of topics. And my going in position here is always that in the main, emerging technology, whether it's machine learning, whether it's blockchain, whether it's AI, any of the emerging technologies today, they're usually built or designed with good intent to do good. However, often they get applied in a negative way to get negative outcomes. So I think the technology per se is often, in most cases, designed with good intent and have good outcomes. It's how we apply it. And so if I dig into that just a little bit deeper, it's my sense that technology today, certainly some of the emerging technologies, can be a huge ally for the DE&I agenda. Yeah. Let's try and pick some examples that sort of come to mind. If you think about the fact that today we can have access to a huge amount of learning content because of new technology. So you have a digital learning platform. What does that mean? It means that more of us have access to more learning content. More of us, if you apply AI into that space, also means we have access to curated content. So you don't have to kind of go through thousands of books, but or videos or stuff gets thrown at you. In the old days, it's that you can get curated content that's easily accessible. That also means that I could access that material, that learning opportunity at much lower cost, sometimes free. If you have Wi-Fi, it's accessible. So it's curated, it's accessible, and of course it's available across multiple platforms. So I could go into the office in the morning, on the train, listen to something for 15 minutes, get into the office. If it's still running, I can, just continue on that, pick it up at, different times in the day. So it's entirely flexible and highly personalized and highly relevant for me. And that's only or mostly because of emerging tech giving you that capability. So it's really democratizing the way learning and access to content. Now, if we take that, so in my mind, that's a positive outcome. And as we all look to enhance our career opportunities, develop ourselves for personal development, professional development, that can only be a positive. If I go into that, if I continue on that on a similar vein, the other area that I see it as an opportunity is in skills. As we spoke about last time when we had a brief chat, the world is moving away from just having these very traditional roles, HR manager, accountant, etc., to a portfolio of work, but much more focused on the skills that you have to perform a certain task. And so if you can identify proactively what skills you need and how you can develop those for roles in the organization or in the broader workforce, that's a real positive outcome. And we now have the ability with multiple platforms and organizations to identify skills that you've had in the past. In your case, as a footballer, the skills that you picked up in terms of leadership, team players, team management, reading the game, you name it, you have a huge amount of skills. If it's on your LinkedIn profile or in your CV, the technology exists today to read that. And that then follows you into your next role. You don't have to prove that whether you have it or not. There's evidence to infer that into where you are today. It gets more sophisticated in that it can tell you your level of proficiency. So let's just say for your next job, CEO of Google, you need, one of the requirements would be team leadership and team management. You have a history through your LinkedIn profile, through what you've done to say, well, actually, for the last 10 years, I've been doing team management. Here's the evidence. It's secure and incredible because it's in blockchain. And my level of proficiency on a scale of 1 to 5 is 4 because I've been doing it for so many years, and here's the evidence for it. And here's supporting evidence for it. So you can get to that level of granularity pretty quickly in an environment. And then to be more specific around your question, what does it mean from a DE&I perspective? It means that those barriers that existed in the past to either access learning content or to understand what skills I have and move around in a sort of cross portfolios is no longer only valid or only going to work because I know you or there's a personal network. Of course, it exists, but there's much more compelling evidence and objectivity you can inject into that process or those two particular processes to take that forward. And let me end with one more example, then I'll hand the floor back to you. Lots of technology nowadays allows you to create in larger organizations, sort of mid-size and large organizations, create what they call an internal talent marketplace. And this is one that's particularly I get particularly excited about. So this is the concept of identifying new roles in the organization. And we all know the research shows very, very clearly that people with from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds either are unaware of those opportunities or their knowledge of the opportunities are very limited. It kind of just goes by people not knowing. Progression through your career is probably slower than others. And so the concept of an internal talent marketplace sort of provides a platform for more and more people to be aware of the opportunities, to apply for those opportunities because it's an open forum, if you wish. The skills that you need for those roles are, as I mentioned earlier, available through technology. So there's no debate. Magnus is, these are the skills he has, and here's the evidence versus other people. You can apply for that role, whether it's a 3-week project or a new role completely. All that's in a very transparent, ethical way. And I believe that done in the right way, an internal talent marketplace enabled by emerging technologies allows us to get so much further into at least equitable opportunities for more and more people, that, you know, is not only reliant on whispers, hearsay, closed environment, which, you know, which does exist. The list is endless. I can keep talking, but those are some of the things which just immediately spring to mind from a career perspective. And I know the other one that people often talk about, just to quickly to close off on that, is, you know, the ethics in artificial intelligence. Absolutely, there's a huge area, but that can be fixed by having a much more diverse, much more representative number of people working in setting up the AI and the algorithms to ensure that's equitable, it's diverse and reflective of the community and the values that the organization wants to portray.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, listen, that's unbelievable insights into a topic I know that a lot of people are interested in and don't necessarily kind of understand to a degree. I think I speak to a lot of senior leaders throughout the course of any given week, and that is certainly a topic that I know will be of interest to them. So it was certainly kind of good to hear your deep insights into that. And you kind of touched upon the next point throughout your answer to that initial question, and that was kind of, I was going to ask what type of tools and technologies are available in the kind of eco landscape to help drive the DE&I agendas for different organizations.
Yeah, let me pick on 2 examples, and Magnus, I'm going to ask you to hold me honest in terms of timing, because I can talk for a while and get excited.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Talk away.
So let me try and pick up on 2 specific examples, if that's okay. And there are a host of others, but I'll think of 2. So there's a huge body of evidence that really points out and gives you evidence that on a systemic basis across organizations, irrespective of size, that people who have a Black or minority ethnic background, their career progression is very different to most other people. They tend to progress, they have fewer opportunities, they tend to progress slower, and they tend to exit the organization earlier. There are a few other bits and bobs, but kind of that, you know, the data is there, the research is unequivocal. Yeah. And so one of the areas I think we can apply some of the emerging technologies much better is to analyze why that actually happens in an organization. If you have a 20,000 person organization or a 10,000 person organization, look at the historical data to understand, you know, have we recruited the right people? Have we brought them in the right way? Have we provided them the mentorship, the guidance, the support that they need, similar to others, to get us to a fair landscape? And so the point I'd make is that the opportunity is there today for deeper and the use of application of analytics and data to provide insights to understand why this is happening, and then also to understand what we can do about it. You know, is it a gender issue? Is it the inclusive workspace? Do people feel unwelcome because of the imagery in the building? There are real subtleties. You know, how many hours has Magnus had in terms of active leadership and sponsorship and support compared to others as a peer in his role? Why did he get more, or why did he get less? Why did she get more, or why did she get less? You know, we can work through the dimensions of that. The point I'd make is that there's enough data, analytics, comparative studies for us to get a better understanding of people from a DE&I background seem to be, you know, less successful than others.
Yeah.
So that would be one particular one. The other one, which I'm personally also very excited about is this concept of a chatbot. So in IBM, and I'll use IBM because that's what I'm with, we created, or a team within IBM created quite recently, back end of last year, a chatbot that's called Ask Miss Parks. As you can imagine, it's linked to Rosa Parks. And what this chatbot does is allows people to ask potentially complex, potentially emotive questions that they may not feel comfortable to pose in an open forum. Unconscious bias, what does that really mean? Can I use these terms? Would they offend someone? I'm trying to be much more equitable around knowing what's happening in my workforce with regards to events. So, what's the calendar for Muslims? What's the calendar for Hindus? For various religious festivals. You can go in there, ask the chatbot, and it'll give you some access according to that. So the first point is the chatbot is there and it provides standard, consistent, relevant questions to people who either don't have the time or may feel uncomfortable to pose it in a face-to-face. That's one huge benefit. And then, of course, chatbots today are very sophisticated. You can build into that your own organization's responses and resources. So I'd like to, you could type in a question. I'd like to know more about, racism in the workplace. I'd like to read a very good book, understand or get access to a resource on unconscious bias, or whatever the topic, gender equity, LGBTQ, you can name it. The chatbot today is able to give you a link to those resources. It can give you access to curated video content. It can, if you want to, give you access to leaders talking about those topics because it's been pre-recorded, so it's even much more personalized. So, you can say, Stuart comes on and talks to you about career progression, or unconscious bias means this, or what we've also done is we put in there in IBM, and we've given we have a number of our Black leaders tell their own story about their lives and what it means to progress, and some of the lessons they learned, etc. And so the list and the opportunity to use the chatbot and therefore the emerging technology to answer queries and to give access to resources, personalized internal and external, is huge. And those are two tools that I would just, on the top of my mind, that I would say would be extremely valuable to have. Those insights and understanding your historical data, attrition rates, progression rates, to give you the insight to act, and then perhaps use a chatbot like as we have in IBM to give you that level of objectivity and curated content to resources to help you with these very complex, emotive questions often. Yeah.
I mean, the chatbot idea is fantastic, right? Because people do not know what they do not know, and I think a lot of the time when conversations are being had around DE&I, I think sometimes they do get a bit uncomfortable through a lack of knowledge at times, and then there's also that fear of saying something wrong, right? So I think having immediate access to education and content around things that you're actually passionate about but you don't know how to articulate, I think that's pretty powerful. And to see an organisation the size of IBM implementing that type of system or tech, if you like, I think that's a pretty big thing, and I'm sure people will kind of buy into that idea as a whole. It's just constant education, created content, as you said. That's I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know, for example, that we are going to update the content. Already have updated the content. There's a recent discussion, with the George Floyd anniversary upcoming. People are starting to ask, what are you going to do something about it? What's happening in the Birmingham office? What's in the London office? What are the activities? Who can I connect with? And so your choice is you send out an email, which some people may or may not read, or you put it in the chatbot where it's always easily, it's accessible and it's up to date and it's personalized. So those are two things that I would call out. There are a whole list of others I can also call on, but those are the two that for me I in the HR space and working with within this space find particularly useful.
Yeah. No, listen, some again, some fantastic insight and takeaways for anybody that's listening. I mean, whilst, like I said, we haven't got 2 hours to discuss everything, we can certainly do a round 2. That's for sure, because I know there's still some really good things for us to talk about, and you've been literally a fantastic guest. But before I let you go, in keeping with our theme, the DE&I bucket list, what is on your own personal bucket list? And I know this is caught you off guard, but that's the best way.
Yeah, you know, I have probably 2 quick ones. Being South African, I haven't, because of COVID, obviously, been able to visit family. So I think the opportunity, when it's safe to do so, to head back and reconnect with, you know, my other part of my family would be a huge first. You know, that would be the opportunity to reconnect in a way that's that you know, just that would be really, really great. That would be one big item on the bucket list. I think the other one, which is a bit more deeper, if that makes sense, is that as we tick over the 1st anniversary of George Floyd's death, I think that that we all pause to reflect on the impact it's had on him and his family, and I just think it's a moment of reflection, as we do for other big events in our lives, but more so that that the legacy of what he you know, what it meant to many of us continues, and that it doesn't become just in something that happened in 2020. I'd like to think it's ongoing and continues to grow.
Brilliant. 2 very selfless things on your bucket list there, which speaks volumes about you, Stuart. And like I say, super grateful for you taking the time out to have this discussion. I think we probably will have to do a round 2, because I know there's certainly still some things that we could discuss for sure. But honestly, much appreciated. And if you were going to leave people with just one tip, again, putting you on the spot here, certainly around, if we go back to our first topic of discussion around inclusion, inclusivity and physical space in the workplace, if you were going to give one brief tip, what would that be?
Wow, now you've caught me on the hopper.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, at moments when I answer questions like this, sort of moments like this, I go back to my personal hero, which I know is a personal hero for many, many, many people across the globe. But, you know, being South African, I slightly closer affinity, and that's Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
And you know, he's when South Africa became a democracy, made a lengthy speech. One of the things he said then sort of stuck with me. He took it from somewhere. It wasn't his words, but and that was that, you know, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond belief. Yeah. So that's my challenge to anyone listening today. Times are tough, it's hard, but you know, don't fear that you won't make it, or that you won't succeed, or that there's so many obstacles. Think more around, you know, you're much more powerful than any of that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And listen, I'm sure we'll speak again soon, but to the viewers, hopefully we can get Stuart back on for some more powerful insight. But thank you so much for your time. It's been great.